Welcome to Zeph's house. Come in out of the dark and pull the door shut behind you. Tonight's tale is called Dad's Ashes. We scattered my father's ashes on the hill where he was born, under the old oak where he'd spent his last years sitting on a bench looking down at the valley. I thought that was the end of it, the kindest thing we ever did for him. I know better now. 4 generations of us lived in that valley, in the same white house under the same crooked oak. My father died in the room he was born in, the way his own father had, and when he passed there was never any question where he belonged. We carried him up the hill in a coffee can, that's the truth of it, an old coffee can, because it was what he'd have wanted. And we let him go in the place he loved most. The wind took some of them out over the valley, the farmland and the creek that caught the evening light, and I remember thinking, that's right, that's how it should be. A few weeks later, the flowers came. They came up in an arc beneath the oak, little orange blooms, the color of a coal at the bottom of a fire, the kind of thing you'd want to put in a jar on the kitchen table. They grew in a clean half circle, almost like somebody had laid them out, and I'll be honest, I let myself believe they'd come up right where his ashes fell. A man wants to believe a thing like that, a memorial that planted itself. I thought it was a mercy. I went up to clip a few of them, meaning to carry them down to somebody who'd know, the county extension man, the fellow who'll tell you what's eating your tomatoes. But the second the shears went through the first stem, the bloom died in my hand. Shriveled, brown, curled up dry as a dead leaf in January, and crumbled to dust before I'd even reached the truck. I tried another, and every one of them did the same. It was like they couldn't live cut loose from that dirt, like they were rooted to something down there, and being on it was the only thing holding them together. So I took a picture of him instead on my phone and carried that around. The county extension man studied it a long while, and then he looked at me funny and said he didn't know. 40 years he'd done that job. There wasn't a flower in the book that matched. Not the petals, not the way the stem was put together. He said it was put together wrong. I asked the old-timers. I asked Granny Pruitt, who was 90-some and had lived up that holler longer than the road had a name, and who knew every weed and root and bloom God ever made. She took one look at the picture and pushed my hand away, wouldn't even let it sit on her porch. She told me to burn what was on that hill, and burn it quick while it was still small. I thought she was just an old woman being an old woman. I went home. By the end of that week, the little flowers were waist-high bushes. The blooms covered them thick as a rash, that wrong orange, and they shouldn't have grown that fast. Nothing grows that fast. But there they were, swaying when there wasn't any wind to sway them. So I tried to be rid of them. I ran the old push mower up the hill and cut a row straight through the middle. The blades went through too easy, no fighting the stems at all. But before I'd finished that one pass, I looked back, and the row behind me was already coming up. I watched it happen, the stumps sprouting, the stems climbing, the blooms opening and fast forward, and by the time I reached the far end, the near end looked like I'd never touched it. I poured 2 50-pound bags of salt across the whole patch that night. In the morning it had spread another 10 feet. Salt only seemed to make it glad. The flowers came from the ashes, I knew that much. And the ashes came from the funeral home. So I called them. It rang and rang. No answer, no machine. I called the next day and the next. On the 4th day, I turned on the evening news and found out why nobody was picking up. The funeral home had burned to the ground. Took the whole block with it. 5 people dead, the man and his wife who'd run the place 35 years among them. The news called it faulty wiring in an old building. I sat there looking at the smoke on the screen, and then I looked out the window at the hill and I thought, somebody else tried to burn it out too. After that, the flowers changed. The stems went thick and woody, more bramble than bush, and they put out thorns, long, curved, barbed things that always looked wet, like they'd been licked. And they started catching things. A crow first, tangled and dead, then sparrows, a rabbit, a raccoon that wandered too close and never wandered out. There was a smell off them by then, and it wasn't the rot you'd expect. It was sweet, almost like flowers, almost like the inside of that funeral home, that cloying chemical sweetness that's there to cover up what's underneath. The animals couldn't stay away from it. I'd watch from the kitchen window as a squirrel crept toward the brambles, nose working, drawn in. Some of them came back out. Most didn't. I woke up one morning, and the bushes were 20 feet from the house. They'd come down the hill in the night, a tide of orange and wet thorn rolling toward the only home my people ever had. 2 deer lay dead at the edge of it, tangled up, their eyes gone glassy and flat. The brambles had reached my father's bench and swallowed it whole. I couldn't even see the wood anymore. And they were still coming, still spreading, still hungry. Mrs. Dawson came up the road on a Thursday. 70 years old, lived down the way my whole life, and she came carrying a casserole dish the way folks do when they don't know what else to give. She'd heard about Dad. I saw her car pull in from the kitchen window, saw her get out and smooth her dress and lift the dish off the seat. Then I saw her stop and look up the hill at the flowers and tilt her head a little, like she was listening to something I couldn't hear. And she started walking toward them. I was already running. I hollered her name. She didn't stop. She didn't even turn around. She walked up into those brambles like they weren't there, and the thorns caught her dress, and then her arms, and then her face, and she never made one sound. She just kept walking, deeper and deeper, until the blooms closed up behind her and she was gone. The casserole dish lay shattered at the edge of the patch. Tuna noodle. Still warm. That's when I understood there wasn't any saving it. I drove down to the gas station and filled every can and jug and milk carton I could find, 40 gallons, maybe 50, and I started at the house. I know how that sounds, the house my father was born in, his father before him, 4 generations of us living and dying inside those walls. But the roots were already under it. I could hear them at night, creaking up through the basement, pushing at the concrete. If I didn't burn the house was going to become part of the hill. So I soaked the walls, and I lit the match, and I stood in the yard and watched my whole childhood go up. Then I went up the hill. The thorns reached for me the whole way, swiping at my arms and legs while I splashed the gasoline. That sweet smell was something terrible by then, sweet and copper and rot all at once. And underneath all of it, something older, something that had been down in that valley a long, long time before my father's ashes ever touched it. I saved the oak for last, poured the last of the gas around the trunk where his bench used to be, and I said I was sorry, and I don't to this day know who I was saying it to. My father, the land, the 4 generations I was about to wipe off it, maybe all of them. I lit the match. That fire burned for 3 days. It should have burned out the first night, should have run out of fuel, should have been smothered by the trucks. But it kept on, and the flames were wrong. Too orange, too bright, moving in ways fire doesn't move. And there was a sound in it, not screaming, more like a long sigh, like something was finally being let go. The fire department gave up after the second day. They said they'd never seen the like. They said the ground itself was burning, like the soil was the fuel. When it was finally out, there was nothing left. No flowers, no thorns, no house, no oak, no bench, no dad. Just ash, all over again. The truth about the funeral home came out that winter. The cremations they'd charged for, a lot of them never happened. They'd been mixing folks together for years, remains from dozens of people, maybe hundreds, ground up and parceled out to grieving families who never knew the difference. Which meant what I carried up that hill in a coffee can and let go on the wind was never just my father. It was everyone. All of them, all those people, all those lives ground together and scattered on my family's hill and fed to whatever had been waiting down in that valley for the right kind of offering. I don't know what grew from those ashes. I don't know if it was the mixing that woke it or if it was something that had always been down there, patient, waiting on a meal that big. I don't know if burning it was enough. But some nights I think about Mrs. Dawson walking into those flowers with her casserole dish, and the way the thorns opened up to let her in, almost gentle, almost glad. And I wonder if she's still in there somewhere under the ash, still walking, still following that sweet smell down. 300 miles from here, a fire truck goes screaming down a quiet street, and a little girl in her front yard stops to watch it pass. She loves the noise and the lights. When it's gone around the corner, she turns back to her game, and something catches her eye down by the fence where her grandmother's ashes got scattered in the spring. "Mama," she calls toward the house. "Mama, come look at the flower. It's orange, like my dress." That's all for tonight. If this one stayed with you, leave a like and subscribe. There's a new strange tale every week. Sleep well, if you can.